it looks like we are officially live. Hello, everyone. It's so great to see everyone joining this live stream this afternoon. Welcome, welcome. It is 3:30 p.m. over here in Santa Cruz. And so I don't want to waste another minute because we have a fantastic program lined up for you all. But officially, let's get started. So hi, everyone. And welcome to another Labside Chat with the Seymour Marine Discovery Center. My name is Jen Cormier. I work with the Seymour Center, and I will be your moderator for today's conversation. If you have seen a Labside Chat before, welcome back. We're so happy to have you join us again. But if this is your first time tuning in to a program like this, today is an opportunity to have a Q&A discussion with a scientist from UC Santa Cruz. And we're so excited because we will be discussing how scientific research plays a role in the understanding and conservation of the world's oceans. So hi, everyone, and welcome. I am so excited for today's chat because we have the pleasure of talking with and asking questions to Dr. Shawn Noren. Dr. Shawn Noren is a research professor with the Institute of Marine Sciences at UC Santa Cruz. And we'll be talking all about marine mammals, their physiology, how their bodies work, and some of the unique characteristics these animals have to survive out in the ocean. So, Shawn, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so excited too. And I have so many questions lined up for you for our discussion today that were actually submitted by community members in advance of today's talk. So there's a lot. I hope you're ready. But for those of you that are watching at home, if you have a question for Shawn and didn't get the opportunity to pre-submit that question, please feel free to go ahead and add it into the live chat or the live comments, and we'll be able to answer those too. All right, so Shawn, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. So I said earlier that we will be talking about marine mammals and their physiology because that is your area of expertise. So what is it about marine mammals that you are trying to understand with your research?
So I'm what they call a physiological ecologist. So I look at how the animal works on the inside, like how does it hold its breath for so long? Things that are important for a marine mammal. It has to hold its breath because it has to breathe air like we do. How does it stay warm in this really cold water? Because they have the same body temperature as we do. How can they go from prey patch to prey patch and not starve? Because they don't have McDonald's or Trader Joe's sitting at the corner. They actually have to, look for their food, and it might be a couple days. So I'm fascinated by their physiology that lets them deal with the demands of living in the ocean as a mammal. And then on top of that, understanding how they work and then thinking, wow, what are we doing to the ocean now? Like climate change and sonar sounds and other human perturbations, overfishing. How far can these animals' special physiology carry them so they can still survive when we mess up their environment? And is there a tipping point?
Yeah, definitely. And that's so fascinating too, to actually figure out what's happening inside a marine mammal. That is incredible. And I'm so excited to dive into that a little bit deeper. And
dive into that.
Yeah, I didn't even realize I was making that. Thanks for pointing that out. So we got a really interesting question about marine mammals and how they hold their breath, right? So you mentioned that one of what you're trying to figure out is how these marine mammals hold their breath while they dive in the ocean. Because as you pointed out, marine mammals breathe air just like we do. And so they are curious about, how do these animals dive? And we know that they dive, at a certain length of time. That's probably longer than humans, and at a depth too. So what adaptations do these marine mammals have that allow them to do that?
Sure. There's two things we have to think about when the mammal's diving. One, the duration. So depending on the species, these animals can hold their breath from 7 minutes to 2 hours. We would start getting brain damage at 5 minutes. They also have to go super duper deep, depending on the species. Again, maybe 100 meters to 1,000 or more meters. So now we have to worry about pressure effects. If anyone ever does some scuba diving, they know that we can have some severe pressure effects at 150 feet that our body cannot handle this pressure. Unfortunately, we don't know much about how they're handling these pressure effects. It's very difficult to study that. Don't really put an animal in water and then stick it in a hyperbaric chamber. That's the only way we can look at it. So we don't know much about that. So what I look at is how do they hold their breath for so long? So that's something we can start chipping away at getting at that answer. And their physiology is like ours, but over evolutionary time, there's been some little tweaks to it. So for example, we have in our blood a red blood cell that has hemoglobin that holds on to the oxygen. So we breathe in through the lungs, and the heart pumps blood to our lungs and it picks up the oxygen. So they have a little bit higher hemoglobin levels on the red blood cell, and they have a little more blood volume for their body size. But there's going to be a limit to that because the heart has to pump really hard the thicker the blood gets. You know, pumping water versus a Slurpee, your heart's going to pump harder. So we are limited to how much red blood cells they can stick in their body. So the really cool thing that I've been doing a lot of looking at is this really unique oxygen store in the muscle, which we also have, because when we exercise, our muscle contracts so we don't get blood flow to the muscle all the time. So we have this thing called myoglobin, just like hemoglobin, and they use myoglobin like an onboard scuba tank. So they have so much myoglobin in their muscle. So like a white rabbit has 0.02 grams per 100 milligrams. I know that, what's so sciencey, but now a narwhal has like 7 grams. So we're talking lots more. So they have this little cool onboard scuba tank. They also have these really cool, I'm so sorry, my dog's barking. Luckily, she doesn't have much of a bark. I don't know why, she doesn't have a bark, so that's fine. The other cool thing is they have these oxygen conserving tricks. So now we have a big scuba tank inside instead of having to strap one onto the back like we do. Then they have these really cool oxygen conserving tricks. When they go down underwater, they slow their heart rate really slow. And what that is showing us is that they are lowering how hard their engine's working. They're shutting off blood flow to parts of their body that can go without oxygen for a long time, which we didn't, that's weird, right? We need oxygen for our body to survive, but they can cut off certain parts of their body. And so they're lowering how hard parts of their body are working to make that scuba tank last longer.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. And that leads me to my next question is, how are you able to figure this out? Like, how are you able to collect this data? And so we got a question that was submitted, asking if you are out in the field collecting this data, if you are in the lab, if it's a combination of both, if you're working with wild animals or animals under human care. I know it's a big question, but like, how do you figure this out? That is incredible.
Well, I have to say, when I was 8 and I thought I wanted to do this job, I envisioned that I'd be swimming with dolphins every day, but that's not the reality. Unfortunately, I hate to burst anyone's bubble that's out there. I'm going to be a marine biologist, swim with dolphins every day. That's not what I do. Depending on the question, I use 3 different approaches. For seals, it's really easy to go out in the wild and work with animals because they come to land, and I can go ahead and take a blood sample, take a muscle sample. For cetaceans, which are dolphins and whales, a lot harder. I don't want to go out and capture one in the wild. That's way invasive. But what I can do is when they strand onto the beach and they're freshly dead animals, I can go and collect samples, and then I take those samples back to the lab and I'll study the muscle for myoglobin content, how much oxygen stores in this muscle. And then for looking at the dive response, now that's where I partner with aquariums that have marine mammals under their care, because then they can be trained to wear heart rate monitors. So I'll have like a little suction cup, boom, little electrodes, just like we have electrodes, but they're suction cup, pop onto those dolphins, pick up their heart rate, see how their heart rate changes when they're at the surface breathing and when they're going underwater, what happens when they're underwater and they're swimming faster or slower. So I use wild animals, laboratory techniques, and animals in aquarium.
Wow. So just like everything under the sun to figure out the answer to your research questions. And that's absolutely incredible. All righty. So I have to ask, and we got another question that it's pretty funny, because I don't think that any 2 days in your research world are the same. But this question is, what does a typical research day look like for you? And I would love for you to answer that, before we started sheltering in place and even now too.
Okay, well, I'll tell you the most fun I had was I went to Antarctica for 3 months. So my typical research day looked like I was looking at, I'm so sorry, I need a grabber. I was looking at, I'm sorry, everyone, I have a 8-month-old puppy who's hearing my sons upstairs and she, okay, back to science though. In Antarctica, I would wake up every day, put on my big red parka, go out on the ice on skidoos, look for weddell seals, capture a seal. I was doing thermoregulation. How are these babies who have no fat staying warm when it's super duper cold and all these clothes I have to wear? So that's a fun day in the field, right? I'm away. I can just focus on science. I'm in this beautiful place. What's another day? I might go to the beach and someone says, oh, there's a stranded animal. Can you come help with a necropsy and take a sample? So now I am working with blood and guts one day, right? And then another day I'm in the lab doing normal bench work, which I have to say I was not a fan of chemistry in undergraduate, sorry. So, and then other days I'm sitting at my computer writing up the work. We have to publish it, right? We have to write grants to bring in money to do the research. So lots of different things on my day, and it varies, which I like it. No day is the same.
Yeah, it sounds like as a scientist, you have to wear so many different hats, and even on different days or even on the same day at the same time, you're wearing like 3 different hats. So it sounds like you definitely have to be flexible. So I'm really interested about your work in Antarctica too. It sounds like that you were looking at juvenile weddell seals. Is that correct? And I got a question with, I think, someone that's obviously familiar with your research, and they were asking about juvenile marine mammals and if their breath holding capability, if their adaptations to live in the ocean is the same as their adults. So they're pretty much, the question is asking, how are juvenile marine mammals different on a physiology level than their adult?
That is actually, yes, I'm curious. Someone must have looked me up because that is kind of my specialty. When I started doing research about 25 years ago, there was very little information known about the physiology of immature animals because physiology on marine mammals already is hard enough and trying to get stuff from adults. Now you're very careful when you're working with young marine mammals. And so interestingly enough, especially about that diving physiology, baby dolphins, this is my PhD dissertation, are not born looking like their moms. They don't have the high hemoglobin levels or high myoglobin levels. So they don't have they don't have a good scuba tank inside. They also aren't able to change their heart rate to lower it as much during the dive. So they're showing that they are not doing the oxygen conserving tricks to the same degree that their mom is. So, and then small body size impacts your ability to hold your breath. So these babies are disadvantaged as far as, and then the mom who's nursing that calf, for example, and protecting that calf is now also at a disadvantage as she's trying to forage and also has the higher cost of making milk. So she's trying to get lots of food and now she's encumbered by her baby. And now we add all the human activity on top of that. That's the animals that are most at risk, the young animals and the moms that are taking care of them.
Yeah, wow. That I'm so happy that you were able to figure that out, and hopefully we can use this information that you're learning and apply it to different conservation techniques. So that's great. But I am also interested in your research into looking at potential human impacts too, because we got a question asking if you have seen any evidence through an animal's physiology if they have responded to either climate change or rising ocean temperatures, if you've seen anything from an animal's physiology of it changing in some way, or if we're just seeing a response to rising ocean temperatures from them just swimming away or moving away.
So for physiology to change, that's going to be a long evolutionary process. Physiology doesn't change that quickly. That's the problem with these fast human changes to the environment. But what we will see is behavioral changes in the animal first as an indicator that something is different. And I worked with walruses for 5 years, and I was hired by USGS because they've noticed that less ice in the Arctic, these walruses are now coming on shore. And this was like on Yahoo News, like big pictures of all these walruses coming on shore when normally they're out on ice. And because they're now on shore, because ice is not prevalent, they have to swim much farther to their foraging grounds. They specialize on eating clams, which is a very high energetic cost. They're swimming farther. They used to just sit on the ice like a little raft and just dive down and come back up. And the bigger issue is now you have moms with calves that have to do this long swim, when before their calf could just park it on the little ice raft as mom went down. So we've seen changes in behavior that indicate these animals are being impacted. Now the question is, can they survive this change? And that's the $20 million question. And I looked at, I did a bioenergetics model. How many more calories does it take for these animals per day? Now they have to swim more, and add that onto the cost of the mom having to make milk for the baby. So we're trying to chip away of, can we have the smoking gun to say these behavioral changes are really going to impact these populations?
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that is again, I'm just so happy that you're on the front lines of this research. It's really good to have people like you looking at these types of problems. So hopefully that somehow we can fix it or mitigate it or something. So great. So the next question I have is looking at marine mammals and their breath holding capability. And so this person asked, are there species of marine mammals that are better at holding their breath than other species?
Yes, there are, as I said in the beginning, there are animals that hold their breath for 7 minutes. There are animals that hold their breath for 2 hours. So being big, for example, makes you hold your breath. You're just bigger. There's a scaling of metabolism so that just by being big, you're more efficient. So you use oxygen at an overall slower rate. So you would expect these big, humongous baleen whales, right, to be spectacular divers. But what are they eating? They're just skimming stuff along the surface. So over evolutionary time, there hasn't been that drive to make that huge scuba tank. So they're kind of big, but kind of wimpy for their size, right? And then we have these elephant seals, which are right here on Año Nuevo, that are these seals that can hold their breath for over an hour, but they're definitely not as big as a baleen whale, not even close. So there's marathon divers, and we still haven't quite figured out all their tricks that are letting them hold their breath for as long. And again, what's driving these animals to have different breath hold capacities is what they're eating. Elephant seals are going down deep, down to the bottom to find their food.
Yeah, definitely. And then when you say baleen whales, what species are you specifically referring to?
To date, we haven't found any baleen whale that's a phenomenal diver. I mean, normally if you look at their diving records, they do like average of 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And for their humongous size, that's not that incredible.
Yeah, definitely. And these are things like blue whales, right?
Oh, yeah.
And things like,
fin whales, blue whales, humpback whales, gray whales. Yes, sorry.
Awesome.
Thank you for that.
Awesome. And so it's so incredible to hear all of your stories about what you're able to figure out with marine mammals and their physiology. And so I'm curious if you always wanted to work with marine mammals. It sounded a little bit like you did when you were 8 years old. So did you always want to work with marine mammals? And how did you know that this was the right path for you?
So here's a plug. Ranger Rick should pay me for that. So when I was 8, I read Ranger Rick magazine, and I grew up pretty poor. I lived in Maryland, 3 hours from the beach. I never saw the ocean until I was 9. And I was fascinated by it, but I was reading Ranger Rick magazine. When I was growing up, the issues were manatees getting hit by boats, which they still are, dolphins getting caught in the tuna purse seine nets, which they still are, but we've mitigated it mostly, and harp seals being clubbed by the Canadians. Sorry, Canadians. But those are the 3 things that I remember. And I thought, wow, those beautiful animals, someone needs to help them. And I didn't know what it meant to be a marine biologist. I didn't know I was going to be sitting writing grants and doing budgets and writing and reading. But I wanted to do something to help them. That's what got me interested.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And so we only have a few minutes left. So I have 2 remaining questions for you. And they're some of my favorite questions to ask. But I'm curious about, because you have so many incredible travels and so many incredible experiences, I have to ask, what has been the most memorable part of your career?
So one thing that inspired me to become a marine mammal biologist was reading about the dolphins getting caught in the tuna purse seine. So that's how we have that little dolphin safe label on the can of tuna. So I know we don't have time for me to go explain it all, so look that up if you're interested. And my first postdoc was, they are not catching the animals anymore, but these populations are still somehow being impacted. I was called in because of my experience with young dolphin physiology. They thought maybe these young dolphins are not keeping up during this chase. So look up the tuna purse seine chase. And I did a 5-year project, and some of that research was put into a paper that helped change policy. Obama strengthened the tuna, that dolphin safe label, so we don't import tuna that catches tuna that way, chasing dolphins. So that is, I still smile. I mean, that was like 15 years ago, but I was inspired to come into this business because of that problem, and I got to help strengthen that dolphin safe label.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so for folks that are interested in learning more about this too, I will put more resources that you can look at in the video description below as we wrap up here. So everyone watching at home can read more about it, because that is absolutely incredible. And so, Shawn, I have to ask, and I ask every single person that joins us for a Labside chat, is what is the absolute best part of your job?
Everyone tells me I have a big brain. I like solving problems. I like being challenged. And I don't think any other job would require me to think so outside the box every day. Okay, here's a question. Wow, how do I answer that question? Now in marine mammals that are so hard to study, like how can I come up with an experiment to answer that question, given how limited we can be with live marine mammals because they're protected? I like the challenge of it. It's a difficult system to work with. And when you do complete something, it's just amazing. Like, wow, I did do that. I wasn't sure I was going to pull that one off. So yeah, it's just like high and low and problem solving, and oh, that didn't come out the way I thought. So I've got to fix something. Like, okay, let me try this. So I think that's what I like.
Yeah, definitely. The ability to find a solution in these twisty, strange routes that scientists have to take. That is incredible. And it just sounds like you have so much determination and perseverance. And again, I can't say it enough that at UC Santa Cruz, I'm so happy that we could pick your brain and learn more about your research. And we're so happy that you're here solving these problems. We're really, really lucky to have you. So, Shawn, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have. It completely blew by so quickly. I could probably ask you about 50 more questions, but since we don't have the time, do you have a website or another place online where folks can go to either learn more about you or support the research that you're doing?
I'm not the best, unfortunately, of self-promotion, so I do not have a website. You can certainly look up my name, Dr. Shawn, S-H-A-W-N, Noren, N-O-R-E-N. And there's been a lot of like layman articles written about my research, like in The Economist and the New York Times. You probably could find some of the scientific articles that are free press. I do have a gift account at UC Santa Cruz if you're interested in supporting the lab. It is 100% tax deductible because it's a tax ID used for UC Santa Cruz, and you can earmark it for where you want it to go. It goes to Santa Cruz, but then you can earmark it for my lab, for example, which is the Noren Marine Mammal Conservation Lab. I don't know if you can put a link up for me, or I could. Do you want me to spell it out?
No, there is a link in the video description. So folks can go ahead, go to the video description, click on that link to support your lab and your research, and so you can continue the incredible efforts that you're doing.
Thank you.
Awesome. So yes, everything is below. Make sure to check those out. I will also put up some really interesting articles about you also in the video description. So please stay tuned for that too. But before we sign off, I want to give a huge thank you. Oh, it looks like Pat Robinson's in the live chat, giving some updates to where people can find your research. So thanks, Pat, for letting us know about that. Awesome. So before we sign off, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone that has tuned in today to watch today's Labside Chat. It's really supporters like you that make these online programs possible. So also, if you are in the position, in addition to supporting Shawn's research, if you could also support the Seymour Center as well, so we can continue these types of online programs well into 2021. We would be so incredibly grateful. So you can either make a donation to the Seymour Center or become a member with the Seymour Center. All information can be found on our website, which is seymourcenter.ucsc.edu. Again, you can also find those links in the video description below. And this is actually our last Labside Chat of 2020. Believe it or not, time has flown by. So please plan to join us for our next Labside Chat on Thursday, January 14th, 2021. I just want to say thank you again to everyone joining us, and we wish you a very festive, healthy, safe, and happy holiday season. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you in January. Bye, everyone.